there, my name is Steve Gerhardt, and as always, this is the Unagi Observer. Thank you so much for stopping by and watching the video today. For those of you who watched last week's video, hope you enjoyed that GIF Attack AMV. I was not feeling well, and I was starting in a new job, and. So that's why you had that video last week, but I hope you enjoyed it. This week, we're going to talk about back to the theme of this season, talking about Toonami and Adult Swim anime. So we're going to talk about one that was originally supposed to be on Toonami but wound up on Adult Swim, and it is called Blue Gender. Alright, Blue Gender, an anime that appeared on Adult Swim in August of 2003. Now, of course, at that time in the early 2000s, we were getting anime a little bit later. Streaming wasn't quite what it is today. So we got it 4 years after its original run in Japan in 1999, October of 1999. So Blue Gender is definitely a sci-fi, sort of a sci-fi mecha anime, and while we're talking about it, let's go through the notes, shall we? So it was created by a guy named Ryosuke Takahashi. Now, if that name sounds familiar to you, it's probably because he is the creator of Armored Trooper Votoms and, of course, Gasaraki, that very unusual mecha anime, which I'm still trying to get through. It's entertaining, but it's kind of puzzling to me. But anyway, that's for another day. We're talking about Blue Gender. The anime, I believe, came before the manga. So the manga started about towards the end of the anime run in Japan. There is a movie, Blue Gender, The Warrior. Never seen that. I just seen the series on Adult Swim. So let's go over the plot a little bit. So basically, on Earth, a whole bunch of humans, not the majority of the population, but a significant portion of the population is being diagnosed with this disease, and it has a thing called B cells. So our main protagonist, Yuji, in Japan, is one of these people who's diagnosed with the B cells, and it starts off with him with a friend spending his last day before he goes into cryostasis so that they have time to figure out how to heal this disease of B cells. And so it starts off with him with a group of a bunch of other people, and they're getting into their little pods, and then they go into stasis. They wake up about 30 years later in the 2030s, 2030s, and the first thing that Yuji comes to realize is that it's a bunch of soldiers and guns are blazing around him, and suddenly these insectoids are everywhere eating people and mass chaos, and he pees himself. And they actually show this to you on Adult Swim. So he's being rescued, right? So he's being grabbed by these soldiers, and they're like, he's in his little pod thing, and the soldiers get killed, and then he comes across one of these insectoids for the first time, and he freaks out. I mean, he's rescued by a group of soldiers led by this woman named Marlene, who's about his same age, 19, 20 years old. And there's, of course, the mecha, a Shrike, AV Shrike. And she's piloting that, she's killing the bugs, and they're getting him and into a truck, and they're trying to save as many humans as they can, but the only person they can save is him, so all the other people that were in the pods were killed and eaten by these bugs. We come to find out that in the time that he got put into the pod to figure out how to deal with these B-cell disease, and at this point in time, is that the Earth has become overrun with these large insectoid type of things that are called blue by the other human beings that are trying to rescue the sleepers. Sleepers are the people that were diagnosed with the B cells and put into the cryostasis pods. And their mission is to save as many of these sleepers as they can. But because there's only so much space in space, I'll get to that in a moment, and materials and equipment and stuff, they can't save everybody, so they're only focusing on the sleepers. So yes, there are still human beings on Earth surviving, but the rescuers are told, well, they're already dead because they're eventually going to get eaten up by all the insectoids. So we need to save the sleepers who have these B cells, which we think we can use against the insectoids, the blue. So, of course, Yuji has the B cells. So the idea is to get these people into space called Second Earth. And it's this huge sphere, and it's part of a complex. There's also a complex on the moon and a medical complex. And so the survivors that were able to get off-world as the insectoids were overrunning the place, this is where they went. This is where they lived. So it's been about a generation or two that these people have been living in space, training, coming down, missions, periodically coming down and trying to save these sleepers. So the mission to save Yuji goes horribly wrong. And so then the first, I would say, third of the series is really just about Yuji being rescued and taken to Second Earth, also known as the Ark. And in the process, he becomes friends with everyone, learns what's going on, and then of course the insectoids gradually whittle at the team down to just Yuji and Marlene. Yuji is pretty, like, when you watch this, he's pretty helpless, and he doesn't know how would you know how to pilot a mecha against insectoids? Like, you went in while Earth was okay, and then you come out and there's this big monster that wants to eat you, and then there's this mecha thing. Of course you're not going to know anything. So a big part of the third is him being kind of useless, him knowing he's useless, and he's trying to be helpful, and Marlene is very cold and indifferent to pretty much everyone. And as the team is getting killed off, he's doing his best. He's doing his level best, but it's just, he's just failing. So the first third of the series is him getting to Second Earth. They get to Second Earth, and in the final battle, Yuji finally learns a few things and is able to save Marlene and get them on a spaceship that's automated, and the Ark is like, okay, we're going to get you up here now, and they get up into the Ark, or Second Earth. This is where we get to the second third of the series, which is basically Yuji and the other people with the blue cells. Not only do they think that they can use the blue cells somehow to help beat the monsters, but they finally discover, we can really beat the monsters, and these blue cells seem to be able to sharpen up certain abilities for these people who were the sleepers who were rescued. And so some of them are trained to go into combat. Yuji is one of them. And so there's a team of sleepers who are going to go back to Earth. Again, same mission, but kind of also seeing if they can exterminate nests of these insectoids. And so they go down, and Marlene notices that there's something wrong with Yuji, and Yuji's kind of indifferent, like kind of how she was when she came down, and she's like, okay, this is not right. Something's not right here. And as also part of the team, there's a girl who is just is just not self-aware and is just easily manipulated. And this other person who was rescued has developed a messiah complex, and he's going to save everyone. And of course, whenever we see that in an anime, we know how well that works and how much damage he's going to do. So we have those things going on, and they go down, they start taking out nests, and Yuji starts getting more cold and more inhuman-like, and people can't figure it out. Till finally, towards the end of the second third, where they finally figure something out, which is, the B cells that are in the sleepers, that is the genetic material that created the insectoids. So they're basically insectoids, right? Part of their genetic makeup is insectoids, and they're finally discovering that the planet Earth is somewhat sentient, and that the Earth is like, paraphrasing, obviously the Earth didn't say it in this way, but basically saying, well, by the way, you humans started screwing up so badly that I just inputted this genetic code that eventually you were all going to turn into insectoids and just rid the planet of humanity, and I was just going to start over with some other kind of species. And so there's Gaia, Earth Mother, taking care of Earth. So they discover this. Marlene understands this is why all the sleepers that went into the combat program are starting to go insane. As they're wrapping up on the second third of the story, where they're destroying successfully large nests of insectoids, and they're like, hey, we might actually be able to reclaim Earth. The Messiah complex kicks in on one of the other sleepers, and he decides that he's going to be the leader of the new Earth, whatever, and a civil war within Second Earth, the arc happens, and there's all these different factions. It's like Gundam Wing. All of a sudden, all these factions start popping up, and Yuji is part of the faction, the good guys on the medical complex. And the last third is basically the wrapping up of everything and how that plays out. If you want to watch it, I'm not going to spoil that for you. But basically, that is the plot of Blue Gender. So let's get into the nitty gritty. Okay, so the animation is definitely early 2000s animation, but done well. The combat scenes are fun, insofar that those things can be fun. The mecha is nice insofar that when we're introduced to the mecha, the Shrikes, the original Shrikes, they are very utilitarian, armored vehicles, mecha kind of things. So it's not like, Gundam where everything's flashy and whatever. It's just very, there's limited ammunition that it carries, and it has to be reloaded, and da-da-da-da-da-da. So it's kind of nice to have that logistics there. As the series goes on, they make better mech that suit the sleepers with the B cells that go into the combat training. And it does get a little bit more flashier, but still you kind of have the same concept of you have limited resources in these machines. So, and if you use a beam cannon, so to speak, on one of these machines, you have to wait for it to recharge. So it's not like pew, 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 pew. It's like you get one shot and then you're going to have to wait like a minute or two for it to charge back up. So anything can happen. So that's kind of nice to have that little bit of somewhat realistic logistics going on there. There is, of course, the romance arc between Yuji and Marlene that goes on. It is very cringy at the very beginning, but I don't want to spoil it in case you want to watch it. So the story, the first third of the series really does hook you in. Like, you get vested into what's happening at Yuji, because he's not like Amuro in Gundam, where he's just like, oh, I can rate the thing and I can pilot the thing and I can do the thing. I'm special, new type. No, Yuji is just like, oh God, what's going on? Everything's being unalived around me. So it's kind of nice to see someone who's actually failing but trying, right? And his story arc is very interesting in the first third. And it is one of those things where it's kind of like Game of Thrones, where you have characters in the first third where you're just like, oh, I kind of like this. Oh, that he got eaten. So you're going to experience that. So the story of the first third, really good. Second third, once they go up into space onto the arc, and then most of it's in that kind of context, and towards the end of the second third of the show, that's when they go back down to Earth. Things kind of get a little muddled. That's when you start getting all the factions and beginning to see the cracks and the things, and the story takes a very hard left turn, because at the end of the first third, where they make it to the arc, Yuji and Marlene are separated, and there's some time that happens where Marlene doesn't even see Yuji for quite a while, and then they meet up again, and then things are just different and awkward, and it's intentionally so that way, but it doesn't really come off very well in the actual anime. And then, of course, the third and final act happens, and at the end of it, when you realize what's happened, you're just like, what was the point of all this? Literally. So the ending leaves much to be desired for. So much so that when they did the anime film Blue Gender the Warrior, they actually had an alternative. It's basically the story of this whole story in movie form, but they gave us a different ending, apparently. So take that for as you will. So by the end of the third act, you're kind of like going, okay, great, fine, whatever. But I'll leave that for you to decide whether you want to get that far. Like I said, the first, it really does, it grabs you. It really does grab you in the very beginning, because it's a very interesting concepts of just like, nobody really knows anything. That's the other cool thing about the first part of this show, is that you realize that there is no big scientist guy that goes, I can explain everything, so I'm going to take one entire episode to explain the whole freaking thing. People don't know stuff, so they're kind of doing the best they can with what they got, with the information that they have. Some interesting tidbits about, or one tidbit about this show is that it came out on AIC. It was a studio that did it. Came out in Japan in 1999. Then of course licensed by Adult Swim, and originally was supposed to be on Toonami, but it wound up on Adult Swim in 2003. When they licensed it, of course they had the entire series so they could take a look at it, and they said, okay, this is way too violent, this is way too gory, and there's a heck of a lot of sex going on in here. So we're going to cut that down because we're putting this on Toonami, so we got to cut a lot of this out. So they cut a lot of it out. And then they discovered we still can't put it on Toonami. Toonami is more kid-friendly. So we're going to put it on Adult Swim. So Adult Swim grabbed it and they said, okay, great, we're going to run with it. We're going to watch it. Oh, my goodness. We're actually going to have to cut a little bit more. So apparently this thing was just really, really brutal. And the original version, which you can now get, by the way, on Funimation. So I'm kind of wondering if we watch the original version, which I may do on Funimation, and see the actual original series, and maybe that will improve how the ending goes. Maybe I'll have a different take on the ending of it. So that's an interesting little tidbit. So should you watch this anime? Maybe. Like I said, the first act is so I'm before I go into to that particular explanation, let me say this. Critics' responses to this anime overall is very positive. A lot of people like this anime. A lot of reviewers liked it. A lot of critics liked it. But there's a handful of people that are like me. And basically, I'm kind of reiterating what they're saying because I feel exactly the same way. And it is this. The first part of the show really does grab you. Like, you watch it and you're interested and you want to watch the next episode. You're like, okay, what time is it, 3 a.m.? Yeah, I can watch another 3 episodes. I don't have to be at work until 8 a.m. So I'm good to go, because you want to watch it and it's really interesting. But it just, as one critic put it, it doesn't deliver. The end doesn't deliver. And I feel very much the same way. The end does not deliver. So should you watch this? I'm going to go ahead and say watch it if you are a mecha fan, if you like the idea of retaking the Earth because of some catastrophic event and you're using mecha to do so, and it's basically science-based. There's no mysticism in here. There's no there's no magic or anything. This is pretty much science, sci-fi, and mecha. So if you like mecha, I would say, yeah, go ahead and watch this show. It's kind of very interesting in that respect. You'll get hints of Gasaraki, just to warn you. Yeah, I mean, it's okay. So maybe if I watch the Funimation version of it, the actual original version, maybe I might come to a different conclusion. But if you want to watch it for the first third, and if you get it to the arc where they're like, oh, yay, they made it to Second Earth, and if you want to stop there, maybe that's a good idea. I don't know. Up to you. But yeah, if you want to watch it, you can. It's not the most horrible thing. If there's other anime on your list that you really want to get to first, prioritize that. Blue Gender is not something that you need to drop everything and watch. But if you want to watch something interesting, I would say go ahead. I usually go, if I really like something, I'm going to kind of go, like this on this. So Blue Gender, good first third. All right, so there you go. A mediocre review for Blue Gender that was on Adult Swim in 2003, August of 2003. Watch it if you want to. You don't have to. If you never see it, I think you'll be okay. So yes, thank you again for watching the video. I'm glad to be feeling better. I got my new job. I'm kind of getting myself set in my new job there. Kind of doing the same what I was doing before, working in the alcohol industry, selling wine, being a wine snob and a whiskey snob and a beer snob and all that. So that's all going to be fun. I actually have a wine bar now. That's pretty cool. But anyway, back to anime. For those of you, again, as always, if you're going to Gen Con this year, I have my events down below if you want to sign up for it. I would love to see you there. So take a look at it. One, I believe, is the Guns of Tanegashima, talking about the Matchlock, Tanegashima Matchlock. And the other one is, of course, the music of Cowboy Bebop, the soundtrack OST 1. So if you are interested in that and you're going to Gen Con, I'd love to see you there. Other than that, we are working on over on Otaku Station, which is on Anime Archaeology channel that Brett Newhall runs. We are working on that on the new season. We're kind of chugging through it because we all three of us have gotten sick at some point or something's happening in our lives. But we're moving forward on that, and we are working on deep dives on currently Cowboy Bebop. So that's going to be the first, I think, show of the season. So we're working through it. We're getting the season prepared. But we have stuff up there right now. So why don't you go, and the link will be down below, and check it out. All right. As always, please take care of yourselves. I want to see you out there in the world, at the conventions and things like that. Talk to you and say hi, and we can geek out together. That would be very, very awesome. But you got to take care of yourselves in order to do that. So make sure you take care of yourselves, because I love you guys and I want to see you out there in the world, nice, healthy, and happy. Because that's the way we all should be. All right, that is it for this week. And as always, watch more anime.